She said, "What?" I asked, scratching my jaw slowly. I'd been redirected from another operation, and I'd spent what little time I had in transit going over the details. They hadn't put this in the details. "Better court-martialed than dead," General Sherwin repeated, eyeing the information tablet in his hand with heat. I knew that look. I'd had it directed at me a time or two. "They'll come for me. They won't come for you. And I can't let you die." Sherwin was an alpha, and a great bear of a man with a moon face and sharp eyes that missed nothing. There had been many occasions when I wished he was a little less astute. He tossed the tablet onto his desk behind him with a clatter, his expression awash with frustration. The operation tent we stood in was sparsely furnished. A few seats, a desk, a field grid link in the corner, and a big-assed interactive table between us displaying a three-dimensional map of the troubled city. "Get her back, Riker. I don't care how you do it. Just get her back." I nodded and shrugged. "Sure. Who's on point?" "You are." "I am?" Had he forgotten what happened the last time I was on point? They never let me take point. I was tempted to remind him, but something in his cool study told me he knew the risk and was carrying on regardless. This must be a seriously fucked up operation if they were letting me off the leash. "Whatever you need." "Is he dead?" I asked, still rubbing restlessly at the stubble on my jaw. "'Cause if he's not, I'm heading over to the infirmary tent to shoot the hapless fucker myself." Sherwin waved a dismissive hand like he'd already given the idea serious consideration. "I'm inclined to cut him some slack," he said, which had to be a first. Sherwin was renowned for ripping apart those who made mistakes, not cutting them slack. "She is Governor Brack's daughter, and has a reputation for being difficult," he continued. "The allocated soldier was not Alpha, or even a Beta controller. The governor had an agreement with his daughter that she would never be allocated a controller. Still, that's not a good enough reason. It was acceptable while she's in a civilian situation, but not acceptable the moment her hospital became a war zone. The governor is blaming himself, and didn't fight the decision to allocate her one now. That law change pertaining to Omegas can't come soon enough. This is a mess. A real mess. We need her back. She's a singular, and even if she weren't, her research into the Cooper virus has revolutionized our understanding. We've had more new singularities than Alpha since she was given free reign over the program. It was a tragedy she revealed as an Omega, and they gave the position to someone else. The new program director does things a little differently. She is still part of the program, and we need every advantage we can get." "Fuck me," I said, which summed up my opinion on the matter perfectly. "She been captured?" The general nodded. "The hospital is under enemy control." He indicated the location on the map. "All those who made it to the secure complex are safe inside the central sector." I'd read the report earlier. The internal defense system had failed in several sectors, and a hard line existed between the whole, untouched city blocks and what had become a wasteland. Enemy troops were bombarding the next sector's defense, and with over 1 million people within, its protection evacuation wasn't an option. That wasn't my problem. The little Omega doctor was. "Unless she has found a hiding place, they will have her. I want you on point. Ethan was debriefed earlier. Once he extracts her, he'll hand her over to you. Having got him on the inside, we want to keep him there as long as we can." I nodded again. No problem. I'd worked with Ethan on plenty of operations. He'd been working undercover for a while. Balls of steel. And a twisted fuck. But it worked for him, and he got the job done. "You'll need to have a procedure done," Sherwin continued, looking away, "due to the nature of her singularity." "Come again?" I said, and then remembered that I was talking to a general, and that might have been a bit too familiar. Sir." I took control over my rambling mouth. Procedure? Yes, the general said, still staring at the city map. She has certain requirements from a controller. He shrugged. It's technical. The doctor will explain. The benefits are outstanding. Like a shot of raw adrenaline, or so I've been told. They were still testing it, but the program director believes she's had conclusive results for a while, but was stalling because of the personal nature of the singularity. Her body will react to the danger, and you'll need to... He made a little circular movement with his hands. Dr. Singh, the program director, will explain. Sure, I said, and frowning and wondering what the fuck I was being signed up to. Ethan having this done too? Yes, the general replied. Already done, a while ago. A while ago? An interesting side note. And he's okay? Yes, Sherwin said, which wasn't very forthcoming. Ethan wasn't renowned for caution, so I wasn't sure I could take too much comfort in him forging ahead. This was all becoming odd, and I was suspicious that all was not quite right. What exactly is her singularity? Donor, said the general as the operation tent flap opened and a slight, blond man with dark almond-shaped eyes entered. Blood donor. The temporary military base had been established in the city's stadium, a vast dead-ball field which already housed temporary support and storage tents and containers of every shape and size. Thousands of troops had been deployed to shore up the city's defense, along with a dozen healers, and even a singular with supporting alpha teams. The ground was coarse and gritty, and the passage of troops kicked up copious amounts of dust. The doctor coughed. I suppose he was closer to the dust than me, being as he was so short. Still coughing, he directed me into a small tent with a couple of beta guards outside. It was a tiny space, made more so by a wall of medical paraphernalia, a small desk and a chair, and another sturdier chair in the middle. The kind that came with restraint straps. I was told to sit. I sat down, eyeing the straps. No prize for guessing that this wasn't going to be fun. The tiny doctor busied himself preparing my doom, jumping every time I looked his way. Since we were the only two people in the tent, and it was either him or the restraint straps, I looked at him a lot. I guessed he might have been the one to administer whatever the fuck this was to Ethan, and that might explain the nervous twitching. At first, I thought he was an Omega, but there was no scent, and Omegas always smelled alluring, male or female. Didn't matter. Having finished the preparations, he fumbled to strap me down, and here I was given an injection. I'd been in the game long enough to not be fazed by this approach. Whatever this was would hurt like a bitch, and they didn't want me tearing up the expensive equipment if I thrashed. When the doctor suggested a gag might be appropriate, I figured it was going to hurt a lot. And it did. Given a choice, I'd rather go 10 rounds in the practice pit than be strapped to this seat feeling like I was peeling apart from the inside out. Sweat bathed my body, and my stomach cramped so hard, I thought for sure I would throw up. The doctor appeared to come to the same conclusion, because he removed the gag and said, "The worst is over now." He lied. What followed was a series of hot and cold sweats, followed by violent shakes. I bit my tongue during the shakes, got a mouthful of blood from my pain, and wish he'd kept the gag in. "Is this normal?" I grunted when the ability to do something other than writhe returned. I felt feverish, my head pounded, and my stomach roiled. How the fuck was I supposed to go on an operation feeling like this? "Perfectly," said the doctor. His blonde head bent to inspect the information tablet in his hand. "I'm delighted to inform you that you're our second successful candidate. We didn't do so well with the betas." While I was trying to assimilate what that meant, the pain eased. "I can release you now." The doctor put down his information tablet and set about releasing the straps. "You'll experience weakness for a few minutes, but that will clear too." He passed me a water bottle. "I'm thirsty." I gulped the contents down. "So, are you going to explain how this works?" I gestured at myself. This had all happened quickly, and while I understood it was the nature of operations, and that I was effectively the property of the government, a little explanation went a long way. I've never heard of an Omega, singular or otherwise, requiring a specific controller. Sherwin called Lillian a blood donor. The doctor sat on the thin metal chair opposite to me. Yes, Dr. Brack is a donor, a blood donor. You're going to need to drink her blood. Come again? I swiped a hand over my face, then reached to knead the back of my neck. You want me to drink her blood? Are you fucking insane? The doctor's face was pinched. Well, fuck him and his feelings. This was a fucked up conversation, and being polite wasn't going to make it any easier. How's that going to work, then? She's going to put it in a cup or something? Yeah, that sounded ridiculous, and really a cup of blood wasn't the first thing that had sprung to mind. Don't I need sharper teeth? No, that didn't sound a whole lot better than a cup of blood. I still poked a finger in my mouth like I was expecting a couple of canines to have magically appeared. Yeah, that was plain stupid. About as stupid as drinking someone's blood. I kneaded the back of my neck harder, but it didn't help to relieve the tension. The doctor stared at my bunched arm and swallowed. The skin over her neck, he pointed at the side of his throat, close to where the jugular sat, is thin, and the blood vessels are numerous. A normal bite will break the skin. I lowered my arm. Then I do what? Drink? Suck? He nodded. That's a bit fucked up, isn't it? I muttered, shaking my head. I can't believe that this is part of a viral dynamic. I have literally got to drink her blood? I couldn't just eat her pussy? There's no need to be crude. What? It's a great way of transferring bodily fluids, and no one needs to bleed. Or even a kiss, like healers do. Because that's also a straightforward, non-invasive way to transfer body fluids. It's not a chemical transfer. Well, not exclusively. We probably should have had this conversation before you shot me up with whatever that shit was. He gave me a questioning look. I've done some freakish stuff in my time, but I'm being honest here. I don't think I can drink anyone's blood. The only time I see blood is when it's spraying all over the place as I kill someone. Omegas are for fucking. The two things don't sit together well in my mind. You will need to find a way, he said, tone bristling with disapproval, as if his direction that I should do so was sufficient to see the discussion close. You ever been with an Omega? He shook his head, but his eyes darkened in an interesting little tell. Looked to me like the little doctor wanted to. Or maybe he just wanted to fuck Lily. How long have you been working with her? 9 years. Almost 10. I've been her research partner since she started working with the Cooper virus. Poor bastard. What are you anyway? Can you still smell her? I can't imagine trying to work all day with someone who smells like that. The pinched expression was back. Dr. Brack was extremely late. 25 when the virus revealed. She believed herself immune. That was 3 years ago. That got a raised eyebrow from me. She was older than I presumed, and I never heard of anyone revealing so late. No wonder she had developed an independent streak. I'd been 13 when I identified as an alpha, still a kid, and I'd been trained and prepared for what I would become ever since. And to become an Omega after all that time, to suddenly lose your ability to be objective, must feel a lot like losing your mind. Still, we were what we were. All had our part to play. And however it had to come about, she was an Omega, and she needed to be controlled. I am a Theta, Singh said, and yes, I can still smell her. I'm just not a slave to my basal urges. I grinned. Yeah, poor bastard wished he was. 3 years, that's gotta fuck you up. Nothing smells as good as an Omega, and you sit with that every day. I can smell one at 50 paces. Trust me on this. Their hot little cunts taste even better than they smell. And they are so fucking tight. He made a strangling sound, so I figured I might have taken my side discussion a step too far. All that is normal Omega, and it goes both ways. Omegas couldn't get enough of alpha cock, It didn't matter what you did to them. The rougher, the better. And I could be a really demanding asshole when it comes to controlling Omegas. I've tried a lot of stuff. Extreme stuff that I'm sure a little Theta like you would run miles from. I consider myself open-minded when it comes to giving an Omega what they need, but I have limits. You must know how alphas are toward an Omega. Sure, they might get a spanking if they misbehave. I winked for effect, enjoying the flash of anger on his face. I want to protect them. I don't want to make them bleed. I shuddered in disgust. Makes me feel sick just thinking about it. The things alphas did to their little Omegas would, by any other standard, be considered extreme. I had reconciled myself to what needed to be done, but this? I wanted to control them, to discipline them when they were naughty, and even when they weren't. But mostly, I wanted to keep them safe, and I never, ever wanted to make them bleed. You will enjoy it, he said smugly. I frowned. Like fuck I will. I'm going to puke it back up. Your body will absorb it easily. There will be no digestive issues. If anything, you'll prefer it over food, although it will naturally regulate. You'll become flush with excess blood when you need it. For example, if you are injured, or during a situation that drives a chemical response to fear or stress. When that is over, her body will stop producing excess, and you will no longer feel the need to bite her. I grimaced. He had become very clinically detached. He was talking about a woman he had worked with for years, and she might as well have been a microbe under the scope. No, not completely detached. His eyes held a hint of fervor. He'd been waiting for this day, waiting for his little experimental research buddy to get her first dose of alpha. Sick fuck. Yes, I think I was a sick fuck too, because I was starting to become interested in taking her blood. If she needed it. Anyone ever tried this with her before? Had Ethan? For some reason, the thought of someone else getting their teeth into her pissed me off, and I hadn't even met her yet. The doctor shook his head. We couldn't do the full transition with our initial test candidates. However, we did try blood transfers during the test. The results were outstanding when trialed on betas. I have high hopes now that circumstances have forced this onto the next step. The nervous doctor was basking in the pleasure of her imminent downfall, which was a problem for another time. I'll want to bite her, I said, battling between revulsion and curiosity. I will feel the urge to rip her throat open. He nodded again. Well, fuck that, I said inadequately. Mostly, I just want to fuck them. I felt like I'd been cheated. How did I get a defective one? The, other urges will be as per normal, he said, fidgeting with his cuff. My work, of my research with Dr. Brack, has meant I've been given access to the more classified nature of the Omega. Controller relationship. Dr. Brack has never been allocated a controller, but there was extensive testing with pheromones from an alpha we were given access to, and her reactions were normal for an Omega. If anything, it was heightened when she was, flush. I wondered how many times he jacked off thinking about his little Omega colleague getting fucked by a big alpha cock. A lot. So, I'll still need to fuck her? I said, cataloging his reaction for future reference, and wondering how much trouble I would get in if I strangled his skinny ass. Too much. Assuming she invest, I continued. And no way was I going to ask politely if she wanted to invest. I wasn't above snarling in her ear like an animal until she gave her pussy up. He nodded. Lily is a normal Omega in all ways. That was the first time he'd slipped and called her given name. Maybe he was reminding me he had a close relationship with the Omega I was about to control. Her singularity produces loaded blood that will be highly beneficial to you, and the investment protocol has been wavered in this case. At my recommendation. General Sherman agreed. Her control needs to be absolute. His eyes glistened, and I fought the urge to strangle the little fucker. But I was now feeling a strong sense of anticipation for when Ethan handed her over, so I should probably be thanking him instead. I took a deep breath and fought to get a handle on the powerful urges running rampant through me. I'd seen plenty of blood in my life, and I'd be the first to admit a good fight made me as horny as the next man. But I still thought ripping into a woman's throat was beyond extreme. So why was the idea suddenly intriguing me? Will it hurt her when I do it? Yes. The sick bastard didn't so much as flinch. I rubbed the back of my neck again. I liked disciplining an errant little Omega. Coloring their ass, fucking them raw and marking them. Yes, I loved seeing my marks in their skin. But ripping her throat? That wasn't a sexual kind of pain. You'll want to do it anyway. It will be instinctive if she needs you to take from her. If she's too flush, it can become dangerous and could make her extremely unwell. She will encourage you to bite. She'll rip herself if you don't. I scratched my jaw and tried to be objective. I definitely didn't like the thought of her taking matters into her own hands. Omegas didn't get to be in control of anything. For their own good. Who knew what warped attitude it would spawn if I let her decide to bloody her own throat? Ethan was going to love it. The sick, deviant bastard that he was wouldn't hesitate. If she needed it, and the doctor here was telling me that she would, I'd work it out. She said, "What?" I asked, scratching my jaw slowly. I'd been redirected from another operation, and I'd spent what little time I had in transit going over the details. They hadn't put this in the details. "Better court-martialed than dead," General Sherwin repeated, eyeing the information tablet in his hand with heat. I knew that look. I'd had it directed at me a time or two. "They'll come for me. They won't come for you. And I can't let you die." Sherwin was an alpha, and a great bear of a man with a moon face and sharp eyes that missed nothing. There had been many occasions when I wished he was a little less astute. He tossed the tablet onto his desk behind him with a clatter, his expression awash with frustration. The operation tent we stood in was sparsely furnished. A few seats, a desk, a field grid link in the corner, and a big-assed interactive table between us displaying a three-dimensional map of the troubled city. "Get her back, Riker. I don't care how you do it. Just get her back." I nodded and shrugged. "Sure. Who's on point?"